Pokemon. For the past 20 years, it's been fascinating both kids and adults who have spent hours and hours trying to catch them all. In North America, the series started in 1998 on the original Game Boy with Pokemon Red and Blue. And since then, a subset of gamers have been obsessed with trying to beat that game as fast as humanly possible. Hundreds have tried, but only a few have risen to the top as the fastest people to ever speedrun Pokemon. Let's see how we got there. This is the world record progression of Pokemon Red and Blue. The true origin of Pokemon Red and Blue speedruns can be traced back to the mid-2000s. There's a guy named Jacob McMillan who seemed to have full control of any percent glitchless runs of the game back in 2008. He did a run in 2 hours and 39 minutes, before eventually lowering it to 2.5 hours flat. However, we're not going to be looking deeply at these runs today, since they weren't nearly as optimized as the run I'm about to show you. Let's move a few years later. This particular run of Pokemon Glitchless was done by a fairly well-known runner. His name is Worcester. And on November 14th, 2011, he completed the first really optimized speedrun of Pokemon Blue, 1 hour and 58 minutes. Let's see how he did it. So, Worcester had the choice of picking from Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle as his starter Pokemon. He ended up going with Squirtle. He's the only water type of the three, and the first of the 8 gym leaders that Worcester would encounter, Brock, was rock type. Since water type Pokemon are super effective against rock type, this meant he could easily breeze through the start of the game to level Squirtle up for later. Worcester's general strategy throughout this run was to just make it through the game while doing the minimum that was required. Rather than waste time trying to capture other Pokemon and trying to level them up to use their moves, for the most part he simply rode Squirtle throughout the entire game, going to each of the 8 gyms, then fighting the Elite Four. In addition, he played on Pokemon Blue instead of Pokemon Red, because Pokemon Blue gives you a higher chance of getting Sandshrew after Mount Moon. Sandshrew has the ability Cut, which lets you cut down a tree blocking the way to Surge's gym, allowing you to continue progressing through the game. Worcester was also careful to name all Pokemon, players, and rivals just one character. This way, whenever their name scrolled on screen, it would take less time to type it out. While this may not seem like much of a time save, it adds up over the course of a run. And finally, he was also looking for the diversification values, or DVs, assigned to Squirtle. You see, once the game begins, it randomly assigns values to 4 statistics for your starter Pokemon: attack, defense, speed, and special, on a scale from 0 to 15. Ideally, you would want these values to be as close to 15 as possible, as the higher the value is, the higher the possible value you can reach for that stat. If Worcester got bad DVs, he would just reset the game and try again for better ones. It was worth restarting a run right away than attempting to play it out with bad stats. All of this careful planning awarded Worcester a time far ahead of any other Pokemon Red and Blue speedrunner. McMillan's run looked so much slower in comparison, and it was clear to everyone that Worcester was the dominant Pokemon Blue speedrunner. And as it usually goes with speedrunners, the dominant runner tends to hold on to their record for a very long time. Like I mentioned before, Worcester got his 158, which was the time that the game gave you at the end after completing the game, in November 2011. Well, all of 2012 came and went, and neither he nor anybody else could beat it. But by early 2013, Worcester was back to doing attempts again, this time on his Twitch page, twitch.tv/Worcester, so that people could watch him do his attempts live. And he had a new trick up his sleeve: Red Bar. See, whenever your health gets low during a battle, under about 20%, your Pokemon's health bar turns red and the game plays this constant beeping noise throughout the battle. It was basically the game's way of grabbing your attention and saying, you better be careful, you don't have much health left and you can die easily. It turns out this beeping noise has a convenient side effect for speedrunners. There's normally long sound effects and animations that play whenever you gain moves or level up. The red bar beeping noise overlaps these sound effects and makes them not play, speeding every fight up. So ideally, Worcester would get Squirtle down to low health, at that health for as long as he could do, and get as many benefits as possible from Red Bar. The problem was, he was often one attack away from dying when under the effects of Red Bar, so there was no real consistent way to set it up repeatedly throughout the run. And ultimately, he was hardly able to use Red Bar at all in this run, only in a couple of places, but partially thanks to a really strong early game, it was still enough to push down the record one more minute, to 1 hour and 57 seconds. This time streamed live for the world to see. By the way, the splits you see on the side were for real time, to give everyone watching an idea if he was on a good or a bad pace. The time that runners were actually paying attention to in the end was the in-game time at the end of the game.
157. Did you get it? Congratulations, man.
And I got trips on my money.
Good.
So by this point, Worcester had had the record for close to a year and a half without anybody being able to challenge him. His method of taking Squirtle and running with him just wasn't working for anybody else. Well, if people couldn't outplay him just yet, maybe somebody could out-strategize him. This is extra tricky.
Ah, 2-0. Damn it.
Extra Tricky decided to start with Squirtle, just like Worcester, because he could quickly get through the first gym with him. However, instead of ignoring all other Pokemon, he captured one, Nidoran. He then proceeded to use him and level him up until he evolved into Nidoking. Nidoking was really overpowered. He has strong stats, can use moves like Thrash and Horn Drill to quickly take down enemies, and was effective against most other types of Pokemon. Most importantly though, he was a lot more effective than Squirtle.
159. Yes. I got 159.
This meant a couple of things for Extra Tricky. The first being that he had to play on Pokemon Red instead of Pokemon Blue. Pokemon Red gives you a 30% chance of encountering a male Nidoran, which is needed to evolve into Nidoking, versus Pokemon Blue's 5% chance.
158. Alright. But 157 definitely going to come. Definitely will come.
The second thing it meant was that the run was faster now. Right? Well, not exactly. Yes, Nidoking was an extremely powerful Pokemon, but it took time to capture him in the first place and level him up to where he needed to be. It wasn't clear back then if Worcester's Blue Squirrel route or the new Red and Nidoking route was faster. Nonetheless, Extra Tricky began doing runs of Pokemon Red with the new route. He did his runs on emulator, which I'm sure won't cause any controversy later or anything. And as you've seen from these clips, he was slowly closing in on Worcester's record of 157.
Yes! I got it! Yes! 157!
Well, there we go. 157. Somebody had finally caught up to Worcester. If nothing else, it proved that this Nidoking route could compete with the Squirtle route, and that even though he had ran the game for so long, it wasn't impossible to compete against Worcester. So then we go into June 2013. And honestly, this was one of the greatest months of speedrunning for a game that I've ever heard of. It all started on June 16th. Extra Tricky was on a run with the Nidoking route that, as you could see from his splits, was a minute ahead of the record. That meant that if he finished this run, it would probably be a minute ahead of the 157 and he would get a 156. Everything had gone smoothly, but then...
No! It didn't fucking press left! Fuck. What does this guy have? I pressed left. What the hell? What does he have? What does he have?
He was trying to avoid this encounter with a trainer. In general, you want to avoid all encounters that are unnecessary, since you gain nothing valuable from them and they waste time. Extra Tricky was attempting to sidestep around him and stay out of his sight, but he accidentally messed up his movements and forced an encounter with him. In all, it wasted about a minute, essentially erasing his lead and leaving him with yet another tied world record of 157. So that was June 16th, and this is what happened the next day, June 17th. This is Bees. You may not have heard of him before, I haven't mentioned him before this point, but you can see from his twitch.tv highlights page that he started streaming his runs sometime in early 2013, finishing runs a little bit over 2 hours long. And after playing more over the following months, boom, he got the record. He used the same red Nidoking route that Extra Tricky had used, played really well, and it paid off for him. He was a full minute ahead of anybody else. 2 days later, June 19th, Extra Tricky did more attempts to get the record back. He had this run that was looking really good at the start. In fact, it was good enough to probably be the best pace he had ever been on. Then, he entered into Mount Moon. I mentioned before that you wanted to minimize unnecessary encounters since you gain nothing from them. You're at a large risk of getting some random encounters in Mount Moon, and you're usually going to end up with a handful of them in an average run. But on this particular run, Extra Tricky got 18 random encounters.
Mount Moon entrance, that's approximately as good as my best ever. 2, 3, fuck. And also do the last. Ah, this encounter rate is complete garbage. And I have the goodest. Oh. This is stupid. What?
He lost 3 minutes, putting him at 2.5 minutes behind overall. Remarkably though, he didn't give up. He kept going and started to bring the run back. On the Misty split, he got 3 critical hits, saving him a turn for each one. Since he defeated them quicker, this meant he didn't have to go into the menu to heal before Misty.
Hello, crit.
All of this saved around 35 seconds. In his old personal best, on the Pokeflute split, he hit himself in confusion, so he had to heal while he kept getting thrashed. This run, he was able to avoid that, and he picked up 40 more seconds there. Luckily, he also got incredibly good DVs on his Nidoking this run, so he was able to defeat opponents a little bit quicker and picked up seconds in many of the splits late in the game. But the icing on the cake was the fact that the splits he was up against were the ones I mentioned before with the accidental encounter in the final split. He was able to successfully sidestep around the trainer this time, and with that, he closed out one of the all-time greatest comebacks in speedrunning history.
BAM! BAM! Yes! 156. BAM!
This run proved how much potential the category still had. Extra Tricky had gotten 156, but still lost multiple minutes early in the game. He mentioned in the description of that video that a 155, or maybe even a 154, might be possible. So who was going to be the one to take it that low? Now that Extra Tricky and Bees were tied for the record, and had been going back and forth with it for a couple of months, it might have seemed like the Pokemon Red route with Nidoking was the definitively better option if one was to go for a time that low. But Worcester proved all who may have thought that wrong. Just 10 days after Extra Tricky's 156, Worcester was doing attempts of the game with Squirtle on Pokemon Blue, and he got on a really good run.
155.
Yeah?
Yep. Awesome. Awesome.
Once again, the record had fallen back into Worcester's hands. He was the only top-level runner still playing on Pokemon Blue, but that wasn't an issue for him at all. He didn't care that he was the only person not getting Nidoking. He was still able to beat the others anyway. Well, except for the fact that the day after Worcester got this run, Extra Tricky got a 155 on Pokemon Red.
155. Oh yeah. Now the world record is tied again.
A month later, Bees got himself a 155 on Pokemon Red as well. And what happened from August 2013 through December 2013 was pretty great. 4 separate runners were able to get a 154. Already established runner Extra Tricky was the first to get it, once again using the Pokemon Red Nidoking route. Over the following months, runners Mounts Bank and J Payne Train were able to achieve a 154 on Pokemon Red as well. And yes, Worcester too was able to get a 154 on Pokemon Blue with Squirtle. I'm not going to go into great detail for any of these 4 runs. They were essentially just better versions of the 155 that had come immediately prior. Better DVs, fewer random encounters, utilizing red bar more, that sort of stuff. I'm going to go off on a really quick tangent here. In late 2013, it was around the same time that people began running a new category of Pokemon Red and Blue known as glitched single segment. Every run I've talked about up to this point, and every run I will be talking about after this point, is from a category known as any % glitchless, meaning that you can beat the game as fast as you can without using any glitches. Glitched single segment, on the other hand, allowed you to use glitches, walking through walls, skipping gym leaders, things like that. This category originally let you beat the game in about an hour, and has since been pushed down to under 20 minutes. But that's a progression for another day. Now, we had these 4 runners, each with a 154. Who would be the first to break the tie? Would it be Extra Tricky with his experience with the Nidoking route? Would it be one of the 2 newcomers? Or would it be Worcester with his Pokemon Blue Squirtle route? Well, it was indeed one of the newcomers, Mountsbank. He got a 153 in December 2013, but sadly for us, it seems the video for this run doesn't exist anymore. All that's really known about it is he played on Pokemon Red with the Nidoking route and finished with a 153 as the in-game time at the end. A few months later though, in March 2014, Worcester more or less put the world of Pokemon Red Blue speedrunning on its head.
151. Wow.
So how in the world was a 151 possible? The key was a route that Mountsbank had discovered a few months prior. You play on Pokemon Red, start with Squirtle, and then get Nidoking just like the old runs. Unlike the old runs, however, when you fight Koga, Weezing does a self-destruct attack. This causes both Nidoking and Koga to die, but Nidoking gets revived with low health because you use rare candies. And you know what it means when you have low health. You get Red Bar. Once you had Red Bar, you could hang on to it while you one-hit KO'd most Pokemon until Bruno. This consistent method of getting Red Bar and hanging onto it for an extended period of time was enough to save somewhere between 1.5 and 2 minutes. Nobody ended up getting a run with the Koga Red Bar strategy until Worcester did, so once he finally pulled off the run, it was record by 2 full minutes. The 151 stood unchallenged for a few months, but on July 9th, 2014, a video popped up on YouTube. Pokemon Red any % glitchless in 150 by somebody named Exarion. Nobody had heard of Exarion before. Worcester, Extra Tricky, Mountsbank, none of them had any idea who he was. He didn't have any videos on YouTube before this one. The run was clearly done on an emulator, which is allowed, but historically whenever a speedrun pops up out of nowhere like this, it's usually fake. So when this run was posted, many dismissed it in the same way. But there was also no proof that the run wasn't legitimate either. The top level runners agreed that everything appeared to be in order, and they figured that it probably was a real run. Exarion himself seemed to be very knowledgeable about the game as well, going as far as posting his own commentary over the run.
Dying unless you're in like a really high red bar. Or heal and give the Bellsprout a turn. And the Bellsprout has Wrap.
It was just so difficult to tell for sure if the run was cheated or not, since when you play Pokemon on an emulator, there's no way to tell if it was tool assisted or not. Tool assisted speedruns are when you enter an emulator and manually tell the game what inputs will be pushed on each frame all the way through the game to create a perfect, or near perfect, speedrun. This can help you both manipulate randomness and execute everything perfectly. The run was reluctantly put up on the official Pokemon Red and Blue leaderboards after a while, but it was quite a controversial decision. Nowadays, we know for a fact that this run was 100% legitimate, and as you'll soon see, Exarion went on to be a very respected runner. But back in 2014, this run was so debated that it led to a severe rule change for the leaderboards that December. Any run of Pokemon Red and Blue that would be considered an official world record had to be run on a console instead of an emulator, so no tool-assisted runs could be passed off as legitimate. This rule put the leaderboards in an incredibly strange position. Top runners of the game had been doing their world record runs on emulator for over a year at that point. That meant that the new official world record defaulted to a 154 that Worcester had decided to do on console just for the heck of it in April 2014. So all of a sudden, the world record once again had an incredible time save potential. We knew from Exarion's run that a 150 was possible, so Worcester and Exarion each took their turns taking the world record back to where it needed to be in September 2014.
Would have been a better run than this. I'm like really happy with that though. Like that's just because like second full run on console.
Gonna save me. 151. 151. Yes. Very nice. Very nice.
It's what I needed. Oh man.
To push the run to 149, however, would take the help of some more work from Exarion. He made this incredibly extensive Google document that detailed different ways to play out the end of the game depending on what DVs your Nidoking had. Depending on your attack, speed, and special values, it would tell you the optimal order to go through the last gyms, the order to use certain items, among a bunch of other things. So, more runs that made it deep late into the game now have potential to be a world record. This turned out to be the key that Exarion needed for a new world record. In January 2015, he became the first person to complete a sub 150 run of Pokemon Red.
Like this is surreal. More than my original. It's not just that I got the 149, I played so solidly.
And he did play so solidly. His work making the spreadsheet paid off, and he finished off a run that wouldn't be challenged for a long time. In fact, 10 months passed without anybody being able to even tie Exarion's 149. But in November 2015, a Pokemon speedrunner by the name of Swap was in the middle of an any percent glitchless attempt of Pokemon Red. His personal best was around the 2-hour mark. Definitely not a world record contender, but a respected runner nonetheless. On this particular run, he entered into the bike shop and opened the bike shop menu, prepared to use a bike voucher. He realized that he didn't have a bike voucher to use, however, and continued playing through the game, lamenting over his mistake.
Wow. Yeah, I did just do that.
But something strange then happened. Every time after that point where text appeared on the screen for fights, it didn't have to type out like it normally did. Instead, it just appeared instantly. Swap had no idea what was going on.
I am so confused.
His chat had no idea what was going on, and nobody in the community had any idea what was going on. It was quickly figured out though. When you enter the bike shop menu, the game sets a flag for text to appear instantly. If you don't have a bike voucher and exit out of the menu, the game never gets rid of that flag. All text then appears instantly just like it would in the bike shop menu, and throughout the whole run, this saves about 1 to 1.5 minutes. A runner named Gunner Maniac used this trick to his advantage to get a 148 run in February 2016.
148.
But hang on a minute, remember what this category was called? Any percent glitchless. Was this instant text trick a glitch? Think about it, you were more or less making the game do something that it was not intended to do. But then again, all that was happening was the game not bothering to reset the flag. The player wasn't doing anything strange, it was the game doing something strange. The community debated this for a while before Gunner Maniac's run, ultimately deciding that it wasn't a glitch. But after Gunner Maniac's run, the topic was brought up again, and it was decided that the trick wasn't allowed for any percent glitchless. So, this 148 got reclassified into a new category called No Major Glitches, and the any percent glitchless record was still Exarion's 149 from 13 months prior. Ultimately though, Gunner Maniac would end up tying the 149 world record a few months later.
149, baby! Let's fucking go. We did it. World record. That's a world record tie with Exarion.
However, thanks to a run with a huge time save in Mount Moon due to very few random encounters, Exarion fired right back in August 2016 with an incredible 148.
We'll keep going for...
A couple of weeks after Exarion's run, a significant change was made to all Pokemon speedruns. Historically, every game in the franchise had their runs timed with the in-game timer at the end of the game. On August 18th, however, the community decided that all future runs of Pokemon would be timed with a traditional, real-time timer from start to finish. There were a few reasons for this decision. The first one was that the only reason Pokemon was ever timed with the in-game timer to begin with was because of old rules from the website Speed Demos Archive, where runners used to submit most of their speedruns for everyone to see them. Their rules said that if a game had an in-game timer, then all runs had to be submitted with that in-game time. Speed Demos Archive reasoning at the time was that an in-game timer would be more accurate than any external timing method, but this didn't always end up being true. So, most games communities, such as Super Metroid for instance, eventually abandoned this practice. Also, with the in-game timer, it was possible that a run could be nearly a minute faster than another run and still be tied with it. The 149 that Exarion and Gunner Maniac both got, for instance, it's possible that Exarion's 149 could have been a 148.31 in reality, while Gunner Maniac's could have been a 149.29. Both of these times would have been rounded to a 149, so even though Exarion's run was 58 seconds faster, the world record would have been tied. Exarion's 148 world record was actually a 150.31 in real time, since the in-game timer tended to report times as being a couple minutes faster than the game actually took due to load times. So now, the new time to beat was 150.31 instead of 148. And the key to beating that time lied within a trick that had been theoretically possible for a long time, but was about to have its door blown wide open. This trick was RNG manipulation. For anybody who may not know what RNG is, it stands for Random Number Generator, and it's essentially just a fancy way of saying luck. So, it's a way of manipulating the luck in the game to get exactly the stats or items that you need. The quickest and easiest way of explaining the RNG manipulation is that the way the game determines what RNG it will give you is from the instant you start up the Game Boy, the game tracks your inputs, and based on which buttons you're pressing when, it will change the RNG that you get. Over the course of an entire run, your inputs will vary drastically, so controlling the RNG this way seemed impossible. But, if you saved and quit the game right before a point where you wanted something, be it stats or an item, you could turn the Game Boy off to get rid of the inputs that were already tracked, then turn it on and do the exact few inputs you need to load into the game. Based on what these few inputs were, you could then control what RNG you get immediately upon returning to the game. These inputs were usually fairly simple, stuff like holding A while the game powers on, but the difficulty that prevented people from utilizing it for so many years was that you needed a frame-perfect A press to clear the save info box the frame after pressing continue. You have a 1/60th of a second timing window to do this, so doing it repeatedly whenever you wanted to manipulate RNG wasn't going to be too viable. But then, that same August, people noticed a video called Pokemon Blue in 69 A presses where somebody beat the game while only pressing the A button 69 times. And funnily enough, this person was able to just hold the A button down all the way through clearing the save info box. This oversight meant that there was no need to do a frame perfect A press, since you could just hold down the A button instead. Initially, players found 3 places where the RNG manipulation could definitely be helpful. While more places have been discovered since then, these 3 remain crucially important. Before Nidobush, you could save and quit to get a Nidoran with a good level and good DVs. In Mount's Moon, you can save and quit to skip all random encounters until Rocket. And finally, outside of Surge's gym, you could save and quit to manipulate which trash cans the 2 switches were under so you didn't have to waste time guessing. With these 3 new tricks, so much RNG and randomness was now taken out of the run. Using the RNG manipulation to his advantage, Exarion was able to get a run of 149.48 in September 2016. Then, in early 2017, Gunner Maniac once again beat Exarion with a 149.41. Interestingly, the in-game timer was a 147 in this run compared to a 146 in Exarion's run, but the in-game time didn't matter anymore. The record was still Gunner Maniac's. This brings us to the most recent world record, 148.50 by PokeGuy84 in June 2017. The large time save over the previous record mainly came from a different late game route that involves fighting Giovanni first and getting Earthquake later, so you skip having to fight an optional trainer. But lately, PokeGuy has been trying to push the record even farther by using a trick known as extended manipulation. Extended manipulation is essentially an extended version of RNG manipulation. Normally, you'd want to manipulate a Pidgey outside of Mount Moon so you can capture him by saving and quitting and performing the correct inputs to get back into the game to make him appear. But you also want to manipulate a Paris into appearing right after you get into Mount Moon so you can capture him as well. This would mean you would have to do 2 save and quits nearly back to back to perform 2 separate RNG manipulations. Turns out it's possible to play through the game from the Pidgey encounter until when you would need to do the Paris encounter with close enough inputs to still get the Paris to appear, without needing to do that second save and quit. But the amount of precise inputs you have to chain together is really difficult. In addition to the extended manipulation, a new early game route has been routed as well, where you skip the Route 3 center and fight the Route 3 last and pick up Mega Punch in Mount Moon. These strategies were all much more risky though, since you have less HP when fighting last. Nobody has been able to complete a run with either extended manip or this new early route. So, as of today, PokeGuy84's 148.50 is where the world record stands. Pokemon Red and Blue has certainly had one of the craziest speedrun journeys of any game out there. The any % glitchless category may not have had the most ridiculous, game-breaking bugs of a game like Super Mario 64 did, or the insane optimization of a category like Super Mario Bros.
Oh! Wait, I don't know. Maybe.
But instead, a combination of rule changes, controversy, and the frequent discovery of new routes and strategies. And this is just the beginning of this game's world record progression. The new extended manipulation and early game route I talked about before will be used in the future to drop the game's time even more. There's also been talk of re-allowing the instant text glitch and merging the Japanese and American leaderboards. So, be sure to keep an eye out for any of the runners listed in this video, or possibly even a new runner, to continue writing this game's record history in the future. Thanks for watching. So this is the part of the video where I normally just have a black screen with links to other videos, but since I can't link it here, I also just wanted to mention that I sometimes do speedruns on my Twitch page, twitch.tv/summoningsalt, so feel free to follow me there if you want to watch me play, or just talk about speedruns, or give me feedback, or whatever you want to do. Thanks.